Just to begin, I want to do like a little intro with what the Liberian Heritage Society is. It's a new organization and it was founded this year. Our goal is to showcase the richness of Liberian culture and celebrate the contributions Liberians from all over the world have made in various industries. And then just to kind of introduce you.
Great. Yeah. Congratulations on starting this company. I'm so excited when I saw the name in the box. Anything like Liberian, I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So yeah, first, congratulations. My name is Kweighbaye Kotee. I am the founder of the Bushwick Film Festival, founder and CEO. I'm an entrepreneur and a filmmaker. And producer actually, and yeah, my main company is the Bushwick Film Festival, but I have a few other small businesses on the side outside of the Bushwick Film Festival.
Okay, great. And so, as we know, you're Liberian, and I just wanted to talk about your background a little bit. Like, what was your process of immigrating to the States like?
Yeah, so my family and I came to the States in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
So we left Liberia in 1983. Because of I guess all the things that were coming up. Actually, sorry, we left Liberia in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, there was like a lot of unrest that was happening leading up to the first Liberian Civil War, which was in '89.
Mm-hmm.
So people at that time started like leaving and going to Ivory Coast and all those things. And we got political asylum eventually. We first went to Ivory Coast, actually. Then we got political asylum to come to the States. So, like if I'm assuming it was a really hectic process. I know that we came first. My mom came first, and then the kids came, and then my dad came. So it wasn't like we all like hopped on a plane and came together. So it was like a process of getting as many people from the family over as possible, as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So that's how we got here.
Okay. And since you were really young, and I'm sure like you don't have many, first account memories from being in Liberia, do you remember like any standout stories that you've heard like over the course of your life, your childhood, that like older family members or your parents have told you?
It's so funny. Like one of the things that's challenging is like getting a lot of stories out of my parents, and like it's not like they sit around and talk about Liberia all the time and all the things. I mean, but I like hearing about like the beaches and like the schools and like them going to school, and like education is and was a huge part of our culture.
Right.
So just like the different schools they went to and what it was like, and just hearing about like my grandparents and things like that. I really like, and what I really like enjoying just hearing like about day-to-day life, like what it was like to be on Benson Street, and what it was like to what they used to do on their downtime, like where the teenagers used to hang out.
Yeah.
And those sorts of stories didn't come until like I started asking questions.
Right.
Like you hear the older people talk, and they talk about they just like joke around with each other, but they don't really say like, let me tell you about this day.
Yeah.
So those stories started coming out of my parents after getting a little older and being more curious about like what it was like in Liberia, and I started asking intentional questions.
Yeah.
Hold on for 1 second. There's this dog in the background that keeps barking. Hold on. Hopefully that's better. I closed the window.
Yeah, it sounds a lot better.
Okay. So it wasn't until I was a lot older and more curious about my history and culture and ancestors that I was like, I used to ask like, what did you guys used to do on Friday night? Like, what did the kids do? Like, who,
Right.
what restaurants or bars, or like, where did you go for the movies? Just things like that. That is very, that I don't, that information wasn't like just available.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so since you left at such a young age, have you been able to like go back to Liberia, and how did it kind of compare to any ideas you had about it before?
Yeah, yeah. You know, I went back for the first time last summer.
Oh, wow.
And that was after like 30 years. So
Yeah.
it was a huge moment in my life. It was like,
Mhm.
it was like going back to your country,
Yeah.
and even though we've lived here for so long, I've always probably because we just grew up like just with a lot of Liberian people here.
Yeah.
But everybody talks about back home, back home, back home.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, luckily, more excitingly, I went back with a project with a
Mhm.
purpose. So I went back because I was working on a project with a local NGO called the Accountability Lab and the United Nations Peace Building Fund.
Okay.
And yeah, and they were doing a project with women storytellers. So
Oh,
basically, I was hired to co-produce a women's peace film festival.
oh, that sounds
Um,
great.
yeah, in partnership with Accountability Lab and the United Nations Peace Building Fund. And so the whole program was they went to all the counties and they went to all the counties and they had a filmmaking program, a documentary filmmaking program, and they I think they were like 50 women from all 15 counties, and they taught them how to make films, and they created stories that were highlighting the issues that their communities were facing. And the purpose of the films was to give, to bring voice and attention to the issues, but also they wanted to use the film as a way to influence policy and like create policy documents around whatever issue they were facing. One film was about like a lack of funding and resources at a women's health clinic that delivers children, and just watching the film you'll just see like they didn't have a lot of resources, etc. Another
Yeah.
film was about a female mechanic who wanted to be a mechanic, but she had no resources or possibilities to get to being a mechanic. Like, she didn't have enough money. There was no education system set up for her. And also like female mechanics just wasn't like a part of the society. Like everybody was just looking at her like, what? You want to be a
Right.
mechanic? So anyway, so there's a whole, for some reason, I don't
Mhm.
know. It's really
Or that it's
weird.
like not solid, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And that also like that hurts. Sorry, that also makes you. It kind of traps me in the mentality sometimes as an entrepreneur still, that
Yeah.
like I still haven't like sometimes solidified it in my head. Like I started applying to grad school. I mean, you could go to grad for business, of course, but like you could go to grad school and still be an entrepreneur. But like that whole idea still hasn't like it's hard to when you grow up in a culture where like it's like, yeah, doctor's, nurse, or lawyer or whatever, like
Yep.
for the entrepreneur herself or himself to solidify it in your brain when so many things are pushing against it, that's challenging.
Yeah, for sure. So being that you kind of started this business with limited resources,
Mhm.
and so I'm sure like that in itself kind of presented some obstacles for you.
Yep.
Can you think of like a specific like, or maybe not specific, but a challenge that you faced during the process, but you kind of were able to like tackle it, and so it kind of made you stronger maybe, and like how did you overcome that?
Yeah. Um, I would say, I mean, the biggest challenge I feel like for probably most small businesses is obviously funding
Mhm.
and raising money. Um, so that's been a challenge. The process of fundraising and raising money, and then when you're a small business owner, or even like a startup entrepreneur, you end up wearing so many hats,
Yeah.
and it sort of takes you away from the fundraising part. So eventually being able to just focus, you know, slowly but surely, like raising enough money each year and here and there to be able to delegate work to other people in the company, or first being able to hire other people in the company, and then slowly like taking the hats off, taking the hats off your plate, so
Yeah.
that whatever your role is, whether it's like raising money or if it's marketing or a specific blah blah, it's always, it's, I feel like a business is always more healthy when, what am I trying to say? When duties, when, uh,
Like goals are kind of
yeah,
assigned.
yeah, yeah. So my challenge, my biggest challenge was that, like, I had to raise money, then I had to do the marketing, then I had to do the social media, then I had to like check all the emails, and I had to like, learn how to build the website, then I had to learn how to design our posters, and I had to learn how to, so basically learning all the things. But
Mhm.
then if for the year I'm doing 80% of all the other things, and I only have 10 to 20% of my time raising money, then that was always a hard thing, like a hard balancing act.
Yeah.
So it always ended up being like, oh, I only actually have the time to raise money for 2 to 3 months. So that means I only have this amount of money. So that means it's like this like rinse and repeat cycle.
Mhm.
So I went through that cycle for a while, until like slowly but surely I was able to hire some people.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess that kind of like forced you to be independent, but also learning what you can handle too. I feel like that's something you might have taken out of that, right?
Oh yes, what my takeaways? Yeah, I guess my takeaways, what I learned well, first, I think it is very valuable though to learn all the things in your company. So
Hmm.
the most valuable thing for me was like, yeah, I know literally all the departments. Like I know how everything works. Like if like, my marketing person is not or sick for the day, like, yeah, I can shift gears and hop into that.
Hmm.
Obviously when you're a super big company, you don't have to because you have like five other marketing people, but like I found it very valuable to know how everything works. And that's just kind of like how I operate. I love like having a bird's eye view on how things work. So that was the one thing that I like really took away. Like I know how to build websites, I know how to design, I know how to like do accounting, I know how to like market, I know how to do our like taxes, all those
Yeah.
things. And another thing that I learned is just building up the stamina and the skills to raise money, like
Mhm.
the guts to walk into offices and be like, this is how much I need and this is why. One year we were like, I tell this story a lot because I really like this moment. One year we were a few thousand dollars. We had a few thousand dollars. We had a gap in our budget and we needed some more money to get the festival up and running. And at that point, I was just like, I don't know where this is coming from. Like, so what I did was I walked into banks. Like I walked into our local banks and
Mhm.
I was like, hey, my name is Kweighbaye. I have this, local event, organization thing that we're doing. And who do I talk to for possible like funding or options? And it actually worked. Like one of the banks, like, their marketing director was there and she spoke with me and, they ended up sponsoring us. So it's just like one of those things, just having like, just being like, I don't know how this is gonna work, but like
Yeah.
we gotta come up with some options. So yeah, building the stamina for raising money because it's so hard, it's so uncomfortable, it's so like, it has to do with like believing in yourself, but then you have all these doubts as an entrepreneur, blah blah blah. So yeah, those are the two things, like learning how to raise money and knowing your business like all around.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's super insightful too, because I appreciate it because like you said, it takes a level of believing in yourself and what you're starting. And also like just knowing that there's so many resources out there and why not just try, like what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's super useful. And kind of like pivoting now because you are also a filmmaker, and an appreciator of film. So how is like filmmaking allowed you to tell stories that you feel like might not have otherwise, gotten a chance to be told or shared? And you did kind of touch on this before, but I wanted to know about that.
You mean as a personal filmmaker or as a person or as a platform?
Um, I would say I would say as a personal filmmaker.
Okay, yeah, I'm very new. I keep on saying that, but like I right now I mainly do have been doing documentaries, like short documentaries.
Mhm.
Um, and I've been hired by companies to make these documentaries, but all of them are about happen to be about underserved voices. Well, not happen to be, like it's been intentional,
Right.
about underserved artists or storytellers or like or low income communities, just sort of using the power of visual storytelling to reveal like the struggle of the human being, the
Mhm.
struggle of the underrepresented person or like the disadvantaged community. And that's what I've been doing over the past few years. And it's most of the projects I've done is projects that I've developed for somebody, but developed with the intention and purpose for that reason. Like whether it's, for example, like I'm doing a documentary right now about some renovations for NYCHA property in the Bronx.
Mhm.
And NYCHA is the New York City Housing Authority. And I'm not too sure if you're familiar with them, but they are like public housing, low income housing. And what NYCHA has been not going through, but over the past few years, the people that live in NYCHA housing have been struggling because they don't get any renovations, and like the walls are falling through, there's mold, like the standard of living and health is like really actually, like, I don't want to say horrific, but like it's kind of bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm doing this project about like the property being renovated, and I'm focusing on key people in the community, like stakeholders and leaders, and hearing about their stories and what the challenges that they face in this living environment. And then another project I did was about local artists, muralists in Brooklyn, um, building murals that speak to specific communities. And I'm also writing a series about about a young Liberian-American woman
Oh, nice.
that is trying to find her way in New York.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the way I use storytelling, I think, is to highlight the people that I didn't see growing up,
Hmm.
watching movies and their stories, and I'm in the middle of those stories, so it's really cool
Yeah.
to be able to have the tools and the resources to bring those stories to the screen.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad that you shared that information with me because now I'm like getting excited for whenever that will be released. So, kind of on the other hand, as a consumer, have there been any like independent films that you've seen in like maybe this year or the past couple of years that really stuck with you and like the message was very like poignant or anything?
Yeah. It's funny. I spend a lot of my time watching Bushwick Film Festival films because we have so many of them over the years.
Mhm.
So like, I don't get to the theaters that often because we're always watching our films. But in 2020, hands down, the best film I've seen was Parasite. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, and there's a controversial film that came out on Netflix that everybody like is.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
But I liked the film. I liked it. It like Cuties I'm talking about.
Hmm.
It really like spoke to me and the immigrant experience, and like a young girl in the midst of like all these things trying to like find a way, even though it's not the healthiest way. Like,
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that. Like when as a young girl growing up in Newark, like like, I did a lot of crazy things.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say crazy things, but like, I'm gonna delete that part out of the.
Okay. No problem.
No, but anyway, so I really related to that story. I know it's like a lot of outrage and all, but I really like Parasite. I really like the other story, Cutie. And most of the other films, I watched like 100 Bushwick Film Festival films this year.
Wow.
So most of my time is dedicated to that, and then when I get to the theaters, I see what I can. I'm
Right.
trying to think of anything else that I saw this year. What else did I see this year?
I know it's been
Um,
a year.
I know, like, who was watching what? Like, I'm sure we watched a lot of movies, right? Especially during quarantine.
Yeah. Can you
What
think
is
of any African films that you remember or
um uh what? How about you? I'm trying to think. I'm sure I've watched it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm currently in like an African like photography and film class, but I will say this year, kind of like the end of last year, really, I watched Atlantics on Netflix. It's a Senegalese movie and it's really beautiful. I recommend that movie. And then I also, I think, kind of end of last year too, I watched a Djiboutian movie called Dalignaro, or in French, it's Jeunesse. Um,
mhm.
and that, you know, they're both kind of coming of age stories. So the first one kind of deals with more like mystical type of stuff, and then the other one is kind of like very like end of high school kind of, you know. And so I definitely recommend those two. Those have definitely been like out of the, you know, hit the whole, like, I don't even know, like, you know, they knocked it out of the park. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah, can you email me those? I'll definitely like take it out. I mean, not take it out. Check it out, especially during like the holiday season.
Yeah. And so do you have anything else you want to add to that, or?
Is that the last question?
Oh no. But
Oh, let me think. Let me think. I feel like specific African film. No, I think I'll leave it there. A cutie and parasite.
that's fine. So kind of changing the subject again, I just wanted to kind of highlight the fact that Black people on the continent of Africa and across the diaspora have been participating in a lot of different movements. In Liberia, we have like the fight against sexual assault, we have Black Lives Matter in the States, and SARS in Nigeria, and a lot more going on. But, you know, in what ways do you think film can be used as a tool to kind of fight against these types of injustices, or how have you seen film used to do so?
Yeah, I feel like film is outside of like just money, of course, like
Right.
is probably the most powerful way to fight against these movements because I mean like visually even just even cell phone footage from George Floyd like
Mhm.
totally sparked an entire global movement, so just capturing um movements and give me a second, I'm like losing my train of thought.
No worries.
So yeah, just using the power of story and storytelling, and specifically visual storytelling. It just has the ability to just say so much and capture so much, and it moves people like deep down inside. It's like you can't really sort of explain it. It's like when when you see a moving picture, um, and in both sets, moving and moving, a moving picture, you feel like you want to do something, and it's completely different. It's similar to music in a sense where you hear a song and you like sort of just fall in love with it. Like
Hmm.
when you see a documentary about like the civil rights movement, or you see a documentary about like South African apartheid, or you see it,
Yeah.
you see all these documentaries, and as an individual you just feel moved to take action,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying 100% of people are moved to take action, but it's more likely that you're moved to take action after seeing a powerful video,
Yeah.
um, than it is after reading a news report,
Yeah.
like, and can you tell me the question again?
Yeah. So the question, basically in short form, is in what ways do you think film can be used as a tool to fight against injustice?
Yep. Okay. So yeah. So with that said, yeah, I think that like in I think film should be used in tandem with any like social impact campaigns.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know what type of films are being put out for SARS in Nigeria at this moment, but yeah, I feel like film should always be a should always be a way to pair up with any like social movements. Specifically documentaries, of course. Like, I don't know if you saw the recent documentary, John Lewis, Good Trouble by Dawn Porter.
Oh, I haven't, but I've heard
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. You know, just like a documentary, like when I'm watching that documentary and I'm seeing, you know, civil rights activists being like watered down by police, like by a hose, or I'm seeing like people getting beaten, you know, you just want to, like, your blood is just boiling, you know, you just want to do something, you know.
Yeah.
But if I read a newspaper from like 1954, I would be like, oh, that sucks. I don't really know what it looks like. I don't know. And you know what? That's what I'll say. Film makes it real. You know, it makes it like so real that you can't really look away.
Right.
Even stories like, I don't know if you watch Lovecraft Country. Do you?
I started reading the book, but I did not watch the show, but I've kind of gotten the spoilers and heard talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about spoilers, but last night I watched episode 9 about Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I literally started crying, you know, just like like you hear about, you know, all Black people know about Tulsa, Oklahoma, right?
Right.
You're just like, yeah, that was the, you know, Black community that got burned and bombed, you know. But like watching it happen, I literally started crying, and I was just like, I need, you know, it just, those things, just like, I need to do, those are like little like moments where your activist inside gets fed, and you're like, okay, what do I do here, you know, and what I do there. And you know, I would love if there was a documentary that came out about the Liberian Civil War. That would be incredible. I mean, I see some stuff on YouTube here and there, like, you know, just, and that's why I really, 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 really want like the African film industry to pop off. You know, like I want it to like flourish, because the world is missing our stories, you know. Unless you are African and you like grew up watching all the African videos, you know, like,
even if you are,
yeah,
you still miss so much.
Yeah. So I really would love, and that's one of my goals. Like, that's one of the reasons why I'm going back to Liberia this time around, like to figure out like what film programs I could start and launch in Liberia. Because the world is missing our stories. They're so beautiful, and the fact that like there's no movie studios in like in I don't know if this is 100% true. I'm not aware of any movie studios in West Africa, let alone like the continent, you know. So like studios like, you know, Disney and stuff like that. So
so kind of on this, in the same vein of, you know, the next generation and how we're going to kind of make it so that these stories are told and shown. What is something that you enjoy seeing now, or, you know, in the past, from filmmakers of the next generation, aspiring filmmakers, you know, and what they're showing?
What is it in them that I see inspired?
So should I repeat that, or was that?
Yeah, can you repeat that one more time?
So what is something that you enjoy seeing in the next generation of up and coming filmmakers?
Okay. That I currently enjoy seeing. I think I like their fearlessness, and then, or their fearlessness, and also their what is the word when you expect something?
Like anticipation?
No, when you know that you deserve something. Entitlement.
That negative connotation, but that was the one I was thinking.
I don't want like minus the negative connotations, but I like that they believe it's their entitlement with the medium, and like their fearlessness, and not like, you know, like they don't have, like, you know, older generations have a lot of fears that came along with racism and all those things, and I feel like the younger generations now, although, you know, a lot of them are activists, but they are just like out there doing it, you know, like they're going out after the resources. They don't have that many like internal, like, I feel like they don't have a lot of internal boundaries, you know. They still obviously face exterior boundaries, but I feel internally they believe in themselves. They feel like they deserve it, which is true. They feel like they're entitled to it, which is true. You know, like, it's like, I like seeing that in them, you know, and I like seeing their courage. and their confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I like, yeah, that's what I like to see. I like that it feels like, I mean, this may, it feels like internally their internal voices are a lot more positive.
I like that.
Yeah.
And so last question to wrap up, what advice would you give to young people and people really of all ages who are, trying to get into film, but they come from maybe a similar background in terms of financial limitation or, economic or social disadvantage? What advice would you give to them, for pursuing their dreams?
I would say that the world is so big and so full of resources and so full of opportunities and people and possibilities that it is wild when you actually like realize it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that what helped me was like, I guess a clear, like, something like a tangible thing I would say is, what helped me when I started my path was to like clear out all the noise. And by that, I meant like anything that you don't like necessarily, like, if you like to go to the club or if you like to like, hang out with friends all the time or like, I would say pay attention to your time and like put boundaries around like, spend most of your time taking steps towards your goal and your dream, like,
Yeah.
and be aware of how you spend your time. And this is something that I'm just like learning now, like I'm doing this thing where I'm like being extremely aware of how I spend like every hour of my day,
Mm-hmm.
and that may be a little bit too extreme for young folks, but like if you just have this in your mind, like I wake up and I'm like, okay, so what am I doing from 8 to 9, what I'm doing from 9 to 10, what I'm doing from 10 to 11. Like it's so easy to sort of like get lost on Instagram for an hour and you're like, oh shit, where'd that hour go, or it's easy to hop on a phone with your cousin and talk to her for like 2 hours, and you're just like, okay, now it's 7 p.m. and I didn't take one step toward my goal. So I would say like, if you just realize that like, every single day you have hours to use to get towards where you're trying to get,
Right.
and if you are using your hours to do other stuff, like, talk on the phone, hang out with friends, like, go partying, et cetera, then you're not getting any closer to your goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just like, that's just something that's just so tangible and so like, if you even start doing that and just say, okay, today I'm going to spend 2 to 3 hours trying to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And just sort of be consistent and be like, just every single day. Because nobody wants to hear like, oh, for me specifically, nobody wants to hear like, girl, it's going to take you 13 years. Like,
Yeah.
and a lot of the times that's the truth,
Yeah.
like if somebody, because I started the festival when I was 23,
Mm-hmm.
24, 23. Sorry, sometimes I forget.
Yeah.
It happens when you're in the mid-30s. You're like, how old am I? So I think I started the festival when I was 23 or 24. And literally at that age and how like my brain was working, if somebody would have told me like, girl, it's going to take you 13 years, I would be like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
But, it actually might, but what I did was I was consistent. Like I did it every single year for 13 years. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until like year 8 or 7 that I was able to, leave my full-time job and make this a full-time career, as an
Right.
entrepreneur. And not everybody has this. I feel like not everybody has this story, but the majority of people do, unless you sort of go the startup Silicon Valley route where you raise, millions of dollars in the first round. But that, like I read about this in my article, like that's challenging for people, for me, in my experience as a person of color, as a woman
Mm-hmm.
that had all these challenges and had all these internal issues with like, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I can't do that, and had to battle all those things. Like, no,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't the young, white boy that went in the room and just knew I deserved $1 million. that wasn't me. I didn't believe I deserved success. I didn't believe I deserved $1 million. Although something inside of me did, but it wasn't the majority voice.
Yep.
So when you don't have that and you are coming from a disadvantaged background, I would just say, like, literally, use your time wisely. Like, if you're in high school or college, like, study for that exam, like, just one step at a time, and like really focus on what your dreams are. And the last thing I'll say is, like, obviously your dreams change as you get older, like, they're not always going to be the same. But if you always, like, literally are aware of how you're using your time, and if it's towards the dream that you're having at this moment, I think you have a really high chance of getting where you need to be. I think it's like almost impossible not for you to get there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was very insightful. And I think that it was honest because, a lot of things don't just happen overnight. And like you said, that's not usually the case with people who are coming from economically or socially disadvantaged backgrounds, unless someone really believes in someone and just says, like, okay, I'll give you all this money to chase your dreams. But, that might not be so realistic. All right, so thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure to interview you on behalf of the Liberian Heritage Society, and I, as well as I'm sure everyone else who tuned in, am really excited to see what's next for the Bushwick Film Festival and what's next for Kweighbaye as a producer, CEO, all of the things. Thank you.